We'll be back in a moment. Glenn Kimball, our special guest. Now it's your turn. Phone calls on Coast to Coast AM. Phone calls with Glenn Kimball. Glenn, of everything you've investigated, what fascinates you the most? I mean, is it the ancient manuscripts? Is it the artifacts that you hear about and witness? What do you love the most?
Well, to be very candid with you, I like the feeling that I get when the dots connect themselves. It not only leaves me with a sense of vindication, but it leaves me with a sense of happiness. And that's what my classes are all about. More than the details, it'll change your life in who you are and how you view the news and how you treat your family. And for me, it's the quality of life issue. Pardon me, but that's just the way it is with me. It really has advanced and grown over the years, and the ancient text is just the icing on the cake.
Good for you. Let's take calls. We'll do it all hour long, and it'll go by fast. First-time caller line, you're on the air. Where are you calling from? Hello?
Hi.
Yeah.
I'm from Appleton, Wisconsin.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller. I just want to say I love the show. I wish that I'd been listening to it since the show started, not just the past 2 years.
Well, we're glad you're here anyway.
First of all, I just want to say I should have took some college math classes, but I'm pretty sure from like 8th or 9th grade math level that your Glenn said that for a DNA molecule to be discovered by us is about a 1 to the 260th power chance, and I'm pretty sure that 1 times 1 to anything is still 1. So I was just wondering why he didn't do it 2 times to something to the power. But also, I have some special information for you, George and Glenn. I feel that through my dreams, I am an alien, and I have knowledge from so many different dimensions that I can see the end times from the beginning every time I dream at night.
And in what you see, do you believe we're right there now?
I believe that I'm an alien, that you're an alien, that everybody listening to us right now are aliens.
And that's what you've been saying, Glenn, all along.
That is what I've been saying, and the caller is right. I meant 10 to the 260th power, and that's what Crick said as well. When you're on the air, it's a 1 with 260 zeros behind it is what he intended to say. That wasn't a quote from me. That's not my math. That is the best of the best. The Nobel Prize winner is the one who said that, the one who discovered the DNA molecule.
Okay, let's go to our wild card line. It's your turn. You're on Coast to Coast. Hello there.
Yes, my name's Stephen.
Hi, Stephen, and where might you be?
Kansas City.
Okay, go ahead. Missouri or Kansas?
Kansas side.
All right, go ahead.
Well, my question was, versus the DNA percentages that you guys were talking of, and also the electromagnetic spectrum that you were talking of, aren't they pretty similar to the fact that we don't even know if we're able to record farther than gamma radiation to determine if the electromagnetic spectrum has even stopped, or that we just can't record any further than that?
Without any question, you're right. But the electromagnetic spectrum, regardless of where you enter the electromagnetic spectrum, it still has a speed limit of the speed of light. The only thing that does not have a speed limit on it is this entanglement theory, and that's the word you should look for if you're going to Google it. Entanglement it's a mechanical relationship between the atoms that were created simultaneously. So that's what you should look for if you're looking for. And if you want to have a class on the subject, they're all over my website, especially the recent ones.
Definitely looked at a lot of the classes and stuff that's available online and otherwise, but there's always that determination of seeing the two differences of DNA and electromagnetic frequencies being so very similar, and having that same difference of we don't know if there's anything beyond that, but we can only record so much of both of them.
Well, in that sense, or from that perspective, the DNA molecule is we've never explored the limits of the DNA molecule. We know what the most complicated ones are, and certainly with the electromagnetic spectrum, we have a good idea of how broad it is. Basically, one cycle per eternity versus the whatever vibrations we can conceive of in terms of the number of vibrations per instant. So it is it's maybe not finite, but you're right. There is an infinite exploration there. But regardless of where you enter the electromagnetic spectrum, it still has a speed limit, when the mechanical models do not.
Glenn, I want you to speculate on this for us, but kind of paint us a picture on the visitation here from either the Watchers or pure extraterrestrials. How did it all come about? I mean, how did they decide, let's go to this planet called Earth, which, of course, it wasn't called that at the time?
Well, if you look at ancient texts, we can speak biblically, but we can also speak in terms of what Betty Eadie saw or what Daniel Brinkley saw or whatever, that we all existed before we came to this world, and we have existed for, if not eons of time, perhaps even eternity. So these are very, very long periods of time. Does that answer your question?
A little bit. West of the Rockies, you're up with us. Hi. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Oh, yes. My name is Jim. I'm calling from Phoenix, Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
I believe this is the first time that I've ever listened to your program.
Well, thanks, Jim. I'm glad you found us.
Yeah, it's a very interesting program tonight. I look forward to going to, is it KimballCollege.com?
Yes, with a Kimball.
Yes, I'm very interested in seeing what's there. But what I'd like to point out is I first became aware of pre-Adamic civilization through a book by G.H. Pember called Earth's Earliest Ages. I'm not familiar with other epics other than just the general idea. And the thing that bothers me is you have millions of people. You can call them the religious right or evangelicals or whatever, and we fail to. These are some of the most difficult people to get to even consider such a notion because of their idea that the Bible teaches the Earth is only 5,000 or 6,000 years old,
Sure.
Which is not at all what the Bible teaches. And our schools fail, our parents fail to teach critical thinking in our schools and in our churches. People don't think, they don't want to look at what's there, and it robs these kids who have a biblical worldview of any kind of realistic defense of their faith in a classroom that's taught by a teacher who's trying to destroy faith. And that's just my comment, that the evangelical world doesn't want to look at this stuff, even though it's in the Bible itself.
Do you run into this, Glenn? Thanks, Jim, where people are just so resistant?
Well, let me add an interesting story to what the gentleman said. We can look at Hitler, for example. Before Hitler came to power and wrote Mein Kampf, when he was still a wallpaper hanger, what he did was he used to frequent a used bookstore. In that sense of the word, he and I would have been good friends because I loved used bookstores. But he used to go to this bookstore. But the guy that was the owner of the bookstore would take Hitler's books in pawn and then sell them back to him when he made enough money to retrieve his books out of there. But he did one thing that was really bad. He used to give Hitler peyote.
Oh, really?
Yes, Hitler was on peyote when he wrote Mein Kampf, and that's not a speculation. That's historical, and so what we have here is we refer back to Carlos Castaneda's for a moment. Carlos Castaneda, when he spoke with Don Juan Matus, Don Juan said that there were 4 obstacles that men reach in this world, and it's going to reflect on this gentleman's comment. He says the first obstacle we have is fear, and we don't have to worry about what that's all about. He says the next obstacle we have to overcome is clarity. Once we overcome our fear, the pieces of the puzzle tend to start putting themselves together, and because we find ourselves to be intelligent beings, we stop listening to everybody else. He says the third thing that we tend to do that's an obstacle in our life is we have to overcome power. And that's what Hitler never was able to do. He was never able to get over the idea that because he had overcome his fear and because he had conquered his own clarity, that he began to get power, and he was never able to get past that. Once you get past that, by the way, Don Juan Matus said that the final hurdle that you have to get over is that you have to conquer death, which I find to be absolutely amazing. That his whole premise was to try and get people to the point where they can leave this earth without having to taste death. But we all have this problem of arrogance. Churches are as arrogant because they're people as our political institutions, as our families, as our cultures, as our mailmen, as our whomever you want to talk to. When any kind of a group gains any kind of an age, we have the Peter principle working for ourselves, where people rise to their level of incompetence. And the first thing that incompetent people do is they become critical. My dad used to tell me that third parties are always negative, which means that and then he told me, whenever you hear someone being very critical, they always identify themselves as being a third party really out of the loop.
So true.
The people who are in the loop stop being critical.
Let's go to our wild card line. You're up. Hi there.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Hi. I'm Mr. This question's for Mr. Kimball. Sorry.
That's all right.
I had connection. You seem to be breaking up. Anyway, I wasn't familiar with your works. I intend to go online and check out, but some of your theories you were advocating are very similar in my mind to those of David Hatcher Childress. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Oh, yeah, he's been a regular guest on the program.
Yes.
And I was just curious. You had mentioned earlier there were four ancient civilizations. Again, not being familiar with your work, I was just hoping that maybe, for at least the benefit of myself and some other listeners out there, you might run through when and where these civilizations existed.
Well, I think it would even be more helpful for you to read or to take the class on Hesiod that's on my site. Let Hesiod teach you about the four ancient civilizations. He wrote at the time of Homer. He did a magnificent job. He was the one to put the basics behind the Alexandria Library that was eventually organized by Demetrius Phaleron. But let Hesiod teach you about these four ancient civilizations. And then what you do is you go to an Indian shaman or to someone in the Vatican who understands the ancient texts that are still in the Vatican, and they will teach you about it as well. And then you can go to India and get the Vedas to teach you, or you can go into the ancient Brits and they will teach you about it, and on the list goes.
Okay, thanks. Let's go east of the Rockies. Your turn on Coast to Coast. Hi there.
Oh, hi.
Yeah.
Hi, it's Paul. Hi, George, and hi, Glenn.
Sure.
Hi.
I just was going to, I was wondering if I could relate a cautionary tale and then maybe ask for your evaluation at the end, maybe some advice what to do. You were talking about LSD and that you wouldn't definitely not recommend that as a recreational drug like Timothy Leary did. Interesting enough, when I was a teenager, about 30 years ago, I did do it a few times as an experiment, and recreationally, that is. And during, coincidentally, a song by the Moody Blues called Timothy Leary's Dead, I sort of flipped out on it and had a near-death experience where I was leaving my body. I floated up over it and was going to leave permanently, and I experienced no bright light, nothing like that. Just it was going to be just nothing, that I would not exist at all. So I decided that wasn't good. It scared the Jesus out of me, and I pulled myself back into my body, got my friends, take me to the hospital. I just had to do something to get out of this. So long story short, very bad trip. Got over it a little bit, but nothing was quite the same since then. And about 2 months after that, I started having health problems. Now I've sort of been plagued by that, and I call it chronic fatigue syndrome. They don't know what it is. You're sick. And I just wondered what your evaluation was. Could that be the cause of something like that, or and how do you get over something like that if it in fact can do that kind of damage?
Yeah, I'll preface it by saying, Glenn, you are not a doctor, but go ahead.
Well, I am not a doctor, and these tales are. This is not an isolated case. There are millions of Americans who have done something recreationally, thinking I'm going to have just a real fun time tonight, and done something that actually damaged them for the rest of their life. And I don't mean chemically in the brain or altered the morphology of the structure of their mind, but what they have done is they've drugged back some of the very dangerous things that lurk out there in these alternative dimensions. We were never designed as three-dimensional creatures to explore 11-dimensional reality. It's such a dangerous thing to do, and it can alter your health. It can alter your lifespan. It can alter your attitude, for good or for ill. But to do it recreationally, non-discriminately, is one of the most foolish things that a person could ever do. I must preface that by saying that I spent my time in 1967 sitting on the corner of Haight-Ashbury myself. I've had my own experiences, and I quickly learned that was not something that I would ever want to do again. You can get lost very quickly, when in reality that you can do the very same thing and do it with fasting and prayer. I mean, one of the greatest experiences of my life was to go fasting and prayer into the desert and pray for a couple of days and sit back and just listen. And when you crack that vortex and you get to the point where you're actually communicating, you can learn anything you want to and be as sober as a judge. And it's an absolutely marvelous experience. Jesus advocated the same thing, and these people who suggest that you need hallucinogenic materials to do that are really not only playing with fire, they're playing with nuclear weapons.
And you just never know the outcome, do you?
You never know. I've had too many friends die. I've been there when people have jumped out of windows. I was there one night when a friend of mine's little daughter went into his stash and put her little hands on top of an LSD sheet, and she's still in a mental institution.
God.
I mean, the tragedy compounds itself exponentially, and I can't imagine anyone playing with this.
Stay with us, Glenn. We'll be back. We'll take final phone calls in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. On our next Coast to Coast program, it's our Friday night into Saturday morning open lines. Those open lines. And welcome back to Coast. I'm George Norrie. Glenn Kimball, our very special guest tonight, and your calls. Glenn, these days, these nights go by quickly with you, don't they? They just fly by.
They sure do, and I didn't want to avoid the gentleman's comment. I'm not a physician, but remember back in history, how did the people obtain this altered state of consciousness? They didn't just do it using ayahuasca or mescaline or peyote or hallucinogenic mushrooms. Most of the earlier societies did it through a process of meditation, or they did it through the process. And believe it or not, the people in the Near East did it through a process of immersion in water, like baptism, all the way back some 2,000 years before Christ. So all of the ancient civilizations arrived at their altered states of consciousness in different fashions. And by the way, probably seeking good medical and psychiatric help is the preferable. But one of the things that people need to do is they need to get in touch with themselves and right that which was made wrong in these horrible experiences that they had. And part of it is getting in touch with yourself, learning something better about yourself, learning something good, and you'll find out you're not as tired, you're not as depressed, you don't lack as much energy. You're going to have energy to burn. I have more energy now at the age of 57 than I had 5 years ago. That's one of the things that's probably changed about me, is it seems I feel younger.
Well, let's go to the phones. West of the Rockies, you're up with Glenn Kimball. Hi there. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, hi. Go ahead, hon.
Hi, this is Julia in Durango. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure, Julia.
Hi. I came in a little late in the show, but I heard George mention that you had come across, Glenn, you had come across some archaeological findings in the Americas that had Egyptian in them. I'm Mormon, and I'm sure you're familiar with the Mormon doctrine that states the belief that the Book of Mormon is a record of peoples that traveled from Jerusalem to the Americas 600 years BC.
Mm-hmm.
What is your opinion on this belief, and what, if any, evidence have you found in your archaeological studies that may back this? There was a recent PBS special called The Mormons, in which the narrator stated that so far there has been no archaeological evidence of that theory or belief.
Well, anyone that says that there's no evidence is nearly always wrong.
Okay.
On any subject. Certainly, we have found Egyptian artifacts in the Americas. We have ancient Hebraic petroglyphs on the walls. There have been all kinds of people in our day find petroglyphs written in Hebrew or written in ancient Negev, which is a combination of ancient Hebrew, Phoenician, and Greek. And see, I'm not an apologist for any particular religious point of view, but to suggest that there was no influence from the Egyptians in this country, I don't know where these people are coming from, because we've studied, as we've said in other shows, the 9 mummies found in the German museums. They did toxicology on their hair, and every one of them had cocaine in their hair, which was grown in the Americas. These are Egyptian mummies, for heaven's sake, from 2,700 years BC, and their insides were lined with tobacco to mummify their bodies with, which came from the Americas. This is an absurd comment that we hear from people who know not what they're talking about when they say that no evidence exists. That is preposterous. That is another part of the gatekeeper's job, saying, nope, that doesn't exist, it's not real, and they don't ever have to account for it or prove it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Julia, thanks. Let's go first-time caller line. You're on with Glenn Kimball on Coast to Coast.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, my name is Kevin. I'm from California, and I just tuned in with Coast to Coast probably 5 days ago. I'm only about 18, and as I enter this journey of life, I'm becoming very curious upon people in power, extraterrestrial.
Sure.
And I am very religious in the point that I believe in God and Jesus Christ to be my Messiah. And in the Bible, we are taught as young Christians, as we were raised, that, there is no aliens, it's not referred to. And we're also taught to not take anything into consideration without accountability as far as literature, text, or anything like that. So what my question for Glenn is how can myself and young listeners like myself take a credibility to this subject, and also know for sure in our own hearts that, we're not dabbling with maybe something that might be demonic?
Well, that's always a question that gets asked of me. That's exactly why I do what I do. You're really the prime candidate to take the classes that I have.
By the way, 18 years old. I'm very impressed with him.
Well, I am as well.
Well, I've been studying the Bible since I was very, very seriously since I was 13. I was trying to comprehend the space of space at such a young age, and I only found faith in God because it's the only thing that truly made sense to me.
Well, there's more. The one thing that people do is, as organizations get old, like we suggested earlier in the program, is they tend to become gatekeepers rather than really helping parishioners learn and discover more about the heavens. They tend to tell people not to read things rather than go out there and learn. And that's too bad, because the Bible has how many books? 66 books, when in reality I told Art years ago that there are 5 million texts dealing with the life and times of Christ, either written by Jesus or written by his associates, written by people who knew him, or written by competent people who knew about him in ancient history, who prognosticated his coming. The text exists. We don't have to discover them by digging some ancient hole and finding where the Templars hid them or something like that. They exist in our libraries. If you want to come and vindicate the beliefs you already have, come to my site. You'll find out that you will still believe what you believe, but you'll find out that what we believe is less than 1% of what is available.
Do you believe that the events at Fatima might have been extraterrestrial intervention?
Well, extraterrestrial in the sense that we've talked about extraterrestrial tonight, absolutely.
Yeah. Let's go east of the Rockies. You're up with us on Coast to Coast. Hi there.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah.
This is Douglas, and I'm from Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
All right, Douglas. Thank you.
And I just wanted to bounce something off of Glenn. I don't know. It's kind of a crazy idea, but...
Yeah, go ahead. We've been bouncing things off him all night.
Okay. Anyway, this Earth of ours, it just resonates energy. And, of course, all over the Earth, we have pyramids. And even in China, I think they revere them. And, of course, you have the Supreme Minister of Antiquities in Egypt. I think that's Zawi Hawass.
Mm-hmm.
My good friend.
Old friend of yours, Glenn. That's right.
Yeah. And he has just found another tomb, I believe, under the King's Chamber. And I was thinking of the pyramids as pulling in energy, from our universe.
I think that's an interesting idea. I think once again you're missing a broader picture.
Well, I was thinking of it as almost like this other tomb that wasn't ever supposed to be found. It's almost like an atomic clock. I mean, if these pyramids are pulling in all this energy and everything, it's actually used all around the world to, like gimbals. They stabilize and balance the position of and the alignment of Earth, and it's ley lines. And I don't know. I just think he should seal that thing back up. I don't believe he should move anything in there at all. But
you wouldn't believe that, though, Glenn. You think everything should be investigated, don't you?
Well, I don't think we should be afraid of discovery, because in the end we're going to find out that the purpose of this world has a happy ending to it. Even with all the suffering and torment and death and pain, everything comes to a happy conclusion. But Jesus said it best in the second verse of the Gospel of Thomas. He said, a man must seek until he finds, but when he finds, he'll be disturbed. Then comes understanding and peace. And it's my comment to people that if you're not disturbed a whole bunch of times, you're probably not doing it right. We should expect to be disturbed. But as we pass through that process of being disturbed and finding the answers to our questions and the answers to our concerns, there is a peace that comes with this that is exciting. It's infectious. I'm absolutely amazed. There are a lot of people that get the messenger mixed up with the message, and that's what I keep telling people. Forget me, take the message, because the only thing I do is publish what's already been printed.
What would you tell a watcher if you met one?
Well, I've met one, and they usually do all the talking. but we all have a million questions. If I met a watcher, I'd say, use me, whatever you need of me, it is yours.
Let's go to our wild card line. Welcome to the program. You're on the air with us. Hi there.
Hi, this is Owen. I'm in Bellingham, Washington.
Hi,
First,
Owen.
let me say it's a privilege to talk to both of you, especially to Glenn, whom I've followed for quite a while. I just wanted to tell you my one and only LSD experience back in 1968. And I, at the beginning, I have to credit Tina Turner with saving my life.
Really? All right, what happened? Oh, I see, yeah.
I went to a concert. which of course was a Tina Turner concert, and had taken LSD with a bunch of my friends. And I got there, and this drug hit my mind, and I could see, and I don't know a number, but I could see paths in front of me, and I could also see that none of them came back. And I knew that if I could not find an anchor to hold me here, that I would not come back. And Tina Turner was my anchor for that hour and a half that I needed her. It was quite an incredible experience.
And by the way, that's wonderful that you've been able to be willing to say that. That's quite a frequent comment, by the way, is people who do this recreationally tend to have this overwhelming sensation of being lost and being afraid that they won't find their way back. Because when you explore the 11 dimensions of the universe, which there probably are more, that's a lot of space. And to find your way home without having a guide or without having a specific intent in mind, what an absolutely dangerous thing to do. That's like taking a rocket ship, not pointing it in any direction, and having enough power to exceed the boundaries of the solar system and hoping that someday you'd find your way back. What a dumb thing to do. You know? That's why I say our young people are permanently damaging not their physical body or even their psychic. They're damaging their attitude by doing these kinds of things, because it tends to make them cynical, frustrated, confused, and tired. All the things that the one caller had suggested.
Glenn, time for a few more calls, and that'll be our night. East of the Rockies, you're up with us. Hi there. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
My name is John from South Mississippi, and although I don't believe that he did it through any ill intention or anything, I believe that your guest has misstated some of the things that Castaneda said.
Such as?
Such as he was talking about the use of plants and their connection to the allies. The allies are what Castaneda called inorganic beings, which were actually co-inhabitants of the earth here. And he discouraged the use of plants. As a matter of fact, at one point he asked Don Juan, "Why did you give me all of these plants?" And Don Juan just chuckled and said, "Because you're dumb," meaning that he had to use them as a tool to shake him out of his grip of reality, his understanding of reality. Now, like I said, I don't believe that your guest did this through any evil intent. I just believe that we all have different understandings of things. And it would take forever to explain all of these things, but if I could suggest, while Castaneda is no longer here, his companions, especially, Castaneda was called the Nawal. Well, he had the Nawal woman, Carol Tiggs, Tiggs, who is still around. And as a matter of fact, she's in Los Angeles.
Oh, is she?
You can get hold of her through Clear Green, CLEARGREEN, at cleargreen.org or Castaneda.org. They're right there in Los Angeles.
All right, thank you. Glenn, would we want to talk to her?
I think you would. I think the gentleman probably didn't catch the part of the program where I said I followed Carlos Castaneda's path into Oaxaca and sat there and had them call the Watchers out of the woods. And from that vantage point, I have a little bit of a different advantage than perhaps just a reader of the books. I had the personal experience myself. But yeah, I think she would be, pardon the vernacular from the 60s, a real trip. She might be able to at least enlighten us in some fashion that we've never had before. But though she was not one of the people that actually, to my knowledge, ever spent time in Oaxaca with Carlos Castaneda, meeting Don Genario or
what kind of individual was he?
Pardon?
What kind of individual was he?
Well, he was very inquisitive. He was much like the people I went to college with, in the sense that we were told publish or perish.
Was he brilliant?
Yeah, very smart fellow, and he chose this path because he had been coached into it because of his experiences with the Native American Indians in California and those who had spoken at Berkeley. And yeah, I think the publisher Perry's idea, he caught on to a subject with his first book, Don Juan in the Acue of Knowledge, that made him money, paved his life for his life, and unfortunately, I think it actually shortened his life, the kinds of experiences he had.
Maybe so. Glenn, thanks for being on the program. Appreciate it always.
What a delight.
2012. Start working on that one.
I'll have it done for you, and I'll give you a twist on that one that you've never seen.
You got it. Thanks. Glenn Kimball. His websites are linked up at coasttocoastam.com. And don't forget our Friday night program, of course, will originate out of the Cave in St. Louis, where we will have special open lines, those Friday into Saturday open lines. The Blue Moon Thursday is come and gone. So if you need to email me, just make that George at coasttocoastam.com as well. Once again, congratulations to Art and Aaron for the little baby Asia, born a couple days earlier. But all is well. For Steve Carr, Dan Galante, Tom Danheiser, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, Sean Ladessor, Ross Mitchell, Alan Corbett, Stephanie Smith, Ian Punnett, and Art Bell, I'm George Norrie. Somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. We'll see you on our next edition. Until then, be safe, everyone.